rotates once on its axis, it gives us our 24-hour day. It also revolves around the sun as it spins, and one revolution around the sun gives us a year. The flat plane in which it revolves is called the plane of the ecliptic, yet during Earth's spin it is tilted 23.5 degrees away from being perpendicular, meaning it doesn't spin straight up and down, but slightly tilted, and this allows for seasons, as when the northern hemisphere is tilted towards the sun, it allows for more sunshine, and we get a longer day, and so it's summer. The opposite happens when it's summer in the northern hemisphere, as the southern hemisphere would be pointed away from the sun and would be having its winter. Twice each year, neither the northern nor the southern hemisphere is tilted towards the sun, and we have both spring and autumn or fall during this part of our year. Our ancestors noticed the similarities between the year and a person's lifetime, as the vegetation would be in maturity during the summer months and start getting older in fall, with the cold and lifeless trees in winter representing old age, and more importantly, the birth of the new in the spring each year. When man realized he could take the seeds from the prosperous harvest of the fall from the previous year and plant them inside of Mother Earth, and thus bring forth life back from the death of old man winter, then man could emulate God himself. Yet it wasn't always this easy. In two separate sections of the earth, running adjacent to the always hot and humid equator, as the equator gets most of the sunshine each year, we have what's called the tropics. The consistent warmth and abundant sunshine of this part of Earth provides a perfect environment to grow certain crops. One crop that grows here, in particular, has been extremely difficult for scientists or botanists or anyone in academia for that matter to explain. Throughout India, the Philippines, Indonesia, and Brazil, the banana is a dependable food staple, and it thrives in the warm, moist climate of the tropics. Its fruit is popular in many dishes and recipes, and even with its close cousin, the plantain, each tree grows its bananas in a banana heart, called a bunch, only once each year per tree. The tree then is typically chopped down and harvested with the soil, recycling the leftovers. The nutrients are returned for the crop for next year. However, many do not know the secrets that this dependable plant has to offer. The banana is unique, as it's the only known plant that can fully sustain a human being, and this is where we get the medical term banana bag. As when someone is sick or dehydrated, a cocktail of supplements and vitamins and a bag of saline solution are administered intravenously. The banana tree is completely edible, all the way down to the roots, with the plant exhibiting all the characteristics of something that was man-made. It's also a mixture of several members of the different food groups, with the leaf being in the herb family, the stalk being in the celery family, with the bulb, which grows off of new roots and bulbs, being in the tuber or potato family, and of course, the fruit itself. The banana has seeds, but these are not active, and thus we don't even notice them when eating it. So then, not having a seed that can germinate, how does the banana tree spread? Well, as I mentioned earlier, it spreads through its root system, with the roots reaching out, and a section will turn into a new bulb, just like the potato does. Yet when the European explorers, who we all have been taught in the public education system were the first to, quote, discover the New World, they landed on the different islands of the Caribbean. When they arrived, they noticed that each of the many islands of the West all had areas with bananas growing on them. This trend continued as South America and its islands were discovered when the Dutch and British established colonies in the New World and were able to set sail around Cape Horn, which is at the bottom of South America, and they started exploring the many islands of the vast Pacific Ocean. A trend was noticed. Many of the islands, some of them not even inhabited by human beings, all had banana trees growing on them. Now, when foods such as corn and the potato were first discovered in and then brought back to Europe from the New World, this marked the first time that they were known of in the Eastern Hemisphere, which is the half of Earth that contains Europe, Asia, and Africa, with the other half, the Western Hemisphere, contains North and South America, or the New World. But this is the case with the banana, as the banana was already known and growing in both Asia and Africa. We're told that the potato wasn't growing in the Eastern Hemisphere because it spreads through its root system, and thus can't be carried across the ocean through the digestive system of birds or animals, yet here the banana is, which spreads in the exact same way as the potato, managing to somehow make its way to both hemispheres and the majority of the islands in between, even though that these were discovered uninhabited. Knowing this, and knowing the banana tree is the only plant that can fully sustain a human, with every part of it being edible, and it being a mixture of 4 different types of foods, does this suggest someone engineered it and brought it along on their journey across the globe so as to have a dependable and sustainable food source? And if so, who were these people? The Amazon River. It's the largest river in the world, and it starts its drainage in one half of South America and eventually makes its way to the Atlantic Ocean. The Amazon rainforest is a vast area that covers much of Brazil, and even though it's said to have been a fable, Francisco Orellana sailed the entirety of the river, and during parts of his journey he encountered tribes of women warriors who fiercely battled with the cannons of his ships, and thus this is where the river and the forest gets its namesake. Francisco's journey reported that many millions of people lived in the Amazon, with every few miles having civilizations that were just as large in population as those in Europe. He said there were huge buildings of stone and even roadways that led deep into the forest interior. When later expeditions made the journey through this river system, hardly any natives or villages were encountered, and it's surmised that after the initial expeditions, Francisco's party had inadvertently spread smallpox and other diseases throughout the populations of the Amazon. Today, with modern technology, such as LiDAR, we are able to peek beneath the canopy of the forest, and hundreds of man-made structures, such as geoglyphs, have been discovered, and thus Francisco's tall tales of cities in the Amazon may have been true after all. When modern scientists started to study the Amazon rainforest, they realized that the soil was very poor and was severely lacking in nutrients to grow sustainable crops. Yet in many areas, which were probably the population centers that Francisco had spoke of, they noticed that the soil composition in these areas was nothing like the typical nutrient-lacking soils that's prevalent throughout the rainforest. These different-looking soils, when first studied through chemical analysis, offered a very surprising result that no one in the scientific community thought would be there. Instead of the poor soil that's typical in the Amazon, This soil seemed to be had human engineered and contained not only different microbes than the rest of the Amazon, but contained biochar, which comes from the burning of live green plants, then smothering them under moisture. This combination wouldn't happen naturally in nature, as scientists gave this newly discovered man made soil a name, terra preta. This suggested that what was first thought to be of very few and very primitive Amazonian natives were performing science and bioengineering the soil to make it very fertile and capable of growing crops. Terra preta has been found in many spots throughout the Amazon and is normally accompanied by man made structures, which suggests Francisco was being accurate in his recordings. Other findings about the Amazon include the fact that it was the birthplace of many types of plants that we have use for today, such as the pineapple and the rubber trees, and many of the fruits and berries that today aren't found growing anymore in the rainforest. When scientists first started looking into the genetic makeup of our food crops, such as rice, wheat, corn, grapes, something unexpected was discovered. Each and every crop we look into, they seem to have been domesticated over 10 to possibly 15,000 years ago. Now, it's not well known to people, but before then, what we grow today and consider dependable were not edible over 10,000 years ago. It's also not well known, but left unattended to, or left wild for a couple of seasons or generations, our crops, which feed billions of people, will revert back to their wild, undomesticated, inedible, ancient state. Doesn't matter which food crop we look into, they seem to have been domesticated and or created around the end of the last ice age. The horse and the oxen, two important creatures in the history of mankind, going from a hunter-gatherer state to being civilized and living in settled down communities. These creatures were domesticated and used to pull plows so as to till the land and grow crops, as well as being a food source. The sheep, the lamb, the horse, the cow, even the dog, are all animals that man has tamed and have become vitally important to our species, being first civilized, then these animals being domesticated, were important and dependable enough for us to advance as a settled down, sophisticated people. Would it surprise you to learn that in the last 10,000 years, with all of our modern day advancements in science and technology, and with our understanding of DNA and the molecular structure of atoms, we have domesticated exactly 0 animals at all? Would it also surprise you to learn that in an age where man is creating artificial intelligence and ever more on the cusp of playing God, that we have created exactly 0 new plants to be edible food crops or a new food staple, is how man was able to do over 10,000 years ago. Who were these people that were so advanced that they were able to combine 4 different types of plants into one and thus make the banana the perfect plant, as any human being can live off of eating it alone and survive? Who were these people who domesticated not only the crops we depend on today, but the animals that have helped us become abundantly prosperous enough to master the globe and settle down and conquer anywhere we please? Who created terra preta so as to grow those crops in an area that wasn't supportive of crop growth? And so that land, the Amazon, was also turned into and let run wild. It is the birthplace of many other food sources that we eat. Who were those ancient voyagers who landed on wild islands and planted the perfect plant, the only plant we know of that can sustain the nutrient requirements of the human body and is the perfect commodity to bring along on an exploratory trip in case of being stranded on a deserted island? How else would a plant that only spreads through its roots stretch thousands of miles of open Pacific and end up on both sides of the planet? When man first noted the seasons, emulated the human lifespan, and planted the seed in Mother Earth and created new life, that seed was somehow domesticated over 10,000 years ago, which is something that, even with our advanced technology, we can't replicate today. And the ground was tilled with the help of beasts of burden that man domesticated, which also is something that we can't replicate today. So yes, over 10,000 years ago, it should be obvious that man once became God. That man is known today as Cro-Magnon. My name is MJ. Thank you for listening.